All right, here we're joined with Emmet Peppers. This is part two of my talk that we're having on Monday night, December 7th or so. So I wanted to chat with Emmet about some deeper topics. The first part you can watch, I'll link it into the video description. I talked about more of our I won't say expectations, but our opinions, right, on what's going on. And this episode, I want to talk a little bit deeper about some different angles on investing. First off, this is a disclaimer. Everything we talk about is purely personal opinion, conjecture. Don't listen to us for investment advice. Everyone's situation is different. We'll have another disclaimer that I show on the screen actually before as well. All right, welcome, Emmet.
Hey, yeah, thanks.
All right.
Good to see you again.
Yeah. We just talked a couple minutes ago. But yeah, I wanted to dive into this idea or this concept of what it takes to catch something that is just not seen yet, or you think is so undervalued, but you're so confident that it will be valued so much higher later on, right? I tell my wife, and I think this often, one of the essence of the core of investing is you catch unseen or unrealized value. Like, something that people just don't ascribe a ton of value to, you are seeing that value in some way, much higher than other people. And then eventually, right, if the investment is a good investment, others see that value as well, right? And you're able to, that's what causes that appreciation in a sense, right? And in a sense, being a great investor is, in a sense, being a master of catching and discerning that unrealized value, right, or unseen value. Now, I think the traditional and conventional investing approach, they think that you can't really do that on a consistent basis, especially with outsized winners and crazy winners. I think the traditional view is it's luck and it's like guesswork and it's high risk to invest in high risk growth stocks. I want to hear your opinion on this stuff, and I want to talk about some of this stuff and kind of dive deeper, and hopefully we'll uncover some gems, of how to really,
Sure.
assess some stuff.
Yeah. No, I think it takes experience, to kind of develop that way of thinking or that philosophy where you want to try to, you hear the saying like skate to where the puck is going. Don't skate to where the puck is now, right? You want to anticipate, It's a lesson I feel like I learned early in life. And one of my first jobs as a busboy, I remember one of the waiters really drilled it into me because I wasn't anticipating getting bread to the table in time or whatever. One of those jobs that like teaches you valuable lessons early. It was a tough job, but that anticipation factor is important, and you can carry that over to market dynamics or trend setting. I remember and I've tested it out and failed a bunch of times, and I try to learn from my failures. So one of my first investments many years ago was an XM satellite radio, that stock, and I think it was 2002 or 2003, one of those years, maybe four, but I think it was 2002 or 2003. It was like $3 a share, and I bought like 100 shares in my $1,000 E-Trade account, that I was like experimenting with, and it went up to like $30, and I was like, wow, in like a year or something. And because I had also bought it in my car at the time, XM satellite radio at like the Best Buy, and I was using it, and I was like, this is great. I think it's going to be a trend, and I bought it in the stock market. So that was my first experience that was positive. But there's failures too, I think like I thought 3D TVs might be a big thing. I didn't buy any stock on 3D TVs, but I was so big, I overspent on a TV, and I got the 3D glasses, and I was like, this is going to be big because I tested it out at the store. But then as I started using it, I realized it's just too much effort to set up and find the channels, and it's not even that great. You have to get people used to, it was just too much. And I realized that trend, I'm glad there was no stock specific for that I bought, that I could buy, because I might have when I bought the TV. But then I realized it's not a trend that's going to take off, And so the same thing with, Tesla or Bitcoin, similar things. You test these things out, you read about it, and you think, okay, is this going to take off or not? And And then luckily there was a stock for Tesla, and we've been able to, that's been our big highest conviction name for years, and we've been able to kind of ride that wave for a long time. But going forward, you just have to keep my eyes open for more trend possibilities with technology and try to use it myself to kind of feel it out. Like my kids use Roblox like crazy, and so I even tested it out and played with them, and I'm still getting into it and testing it and learning about it, but I'm getting more conviction as time goes on that, for example.
Yeah. One of the skills that like I rely on a lot is kind of this discerning a person's ability to clearly think and to strategically think and to like not have to have depth and kind of I don't say power, but something in their thinking that gives them an advantage. And so like in my 20s, I went through this long kind of decade where I really just started to develop the skill of seeing how truthful someone is, what they're saying, but not just truthful in the sense of what typically we consider false or true, not that, but how deep someone is thinking and how clearly they're thinking. Like it's not like this true or false thing. It's more like how perceptive they are in their kind of view of things. How many layers down are they going, in understanding. And I got to the point where I was like able to quickly just discern, very fast, like how people were thinking. And when I ran across Elon Musk, let's say in 2012 or so, that's what intrigued me the most about him was I could see that he was thinking just several layers down, and he had a clearness to his thinking, a depth to it, an accurateness to it. And the thing I appreciated about him was, and I think my wife just reminded me 2 days ago about this. It was at one conference. It might have been 2013, like there was a Test Live conference or something, but she was saying like, I don't clearly remember, but she was saying, yeah, you told Elon before you asked the question, you told him that you were thankful that he gave so many interviews and put himself out there because, and that I had told him I'd watch every single one of his interviews,
And there was a lot of crazy interviews back then.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, there was.
I remember this one interview with this like high school, I don't know, someone's daughter, some venture capitalist daughter, I think, did some crazy like interview with him where she like had her whole like weird kind of setup and was asking him weird questions.
Yeah,
about
I think
philosophy.
I think I remember that. Yeah, definitely. But I was like, yeah, thank you for, putting yourself out there because that gives me the chance to now verify like your thinking. And I think that's where I usually go first too. I usually go first to like the founder, to the CEO, to the decision makers. And I want to see like how deep and clear their thinking is. Like, do they really have a strategic advantage? And one of the concepts I'm focusing on nowadays is this thing I call key insight. I think every founder and CEO, they start a company based upon a key insight. It's something very unique and different. And they just believe in it much like more than other people do. That's the formation of their company. And to quickly identify what is a CEO's key insight and how much potential does this key insight have, right? I think that is getting closer to the crux of a company and to the crux of how you can evaluate a company. Like I think traditional and conventional investing approaches, like you evaluate all of the outside parts of the company. You evaluate the revenue figures, the growth figures, the financials and how the company looks like on the outside, but you don't really dive into the mind of the CEO, and really
there's no way to quantify that easily on spreadsheets.
Yeah. And I think like with Tesla, I think what people didn't catch with Tesla early on, and I don't even know if they're really catching it, most people right now, is they're not catching the key insights of Elon Musk,
That's right.
Like they're just like, and they have a lot of bias, a lot of prejudice, a lot of people, because they think that they've heard a lot about Elon Musk on the news or whatever, and they understand he's just this type of person, right? They have labels already. But if you dive into the thinking of Elon Musk, it's like he has some core insights, like he has this, one of the things is he has this kind of this ruthless optimization insight where he knows if he can cut costs like in 1,000 different ways and improve things in 1,000 different ways,
Yeah.
he can
Yeah.
outdo anything, you know, like with
Yeah.
SpaceX or Tesla.
Yeah.
And he just does it over and over. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
It's like the opposite of death by 1,000 cuts. It's
Yeah,
like you can
exactly.
just, yeah.
Yeah. And then he's got other insights where it's like he will not release a product that is not the best in class for that, you know, price category. He just will not do it. He has
Yeah.
absolute product like mania or focus that he
Yeah.
will, and he'll drive everyone and everything possible to deliver the best product, something that is substantially better than any other company out there, right? For that price point. And he
Yeah.
will literally like almost like put everything on the line for that. I don't think
Yeah.
people understand like how much Elon Musk believes in that, you know,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
product like superiority, and he
Yeah.
knows that his companies will live and die off of that. But like, and there's a bunch of other key insights that Elon has, but I don't think people talk about it that much. You know, I don't hear
No.
that from people, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's
No
like,
one gives, not many people give him the respect. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he could be like a once in 100 year CEO, businessman, engineer, you know, that we don't even realize. I mean, a lot of people don't realize yet, you know, and are just starting to wake up to. Like, you talk about the product, you know, architecture he does, and what comes to mind to me is sort of like Steve Jobs of Apple developing the first iPhone and the iPod and all that stuff, you know, like creating these incredible products that Apple made Apple what it is now. Like, I don't think we all agree, like Apple would not be what it is now if it didn't have those amazing initial those products. Though, I mean, it's been around for a long time, but those products when Steve Jobs came back and kind of like designed them and so forth. So I think Tesla, the same thing, product engineer, that just does better at that than anyone else. It's funny you say that because, or you bring this up. I forgot to tell you when we were chatting before that in my county, I went to an outdoor shopping mall, and Polestar, you know that brand, they have their first. I just discovered by chance their first showroom, I think in the United States, is actually opened. It just opened like a week ago, and I walked into it to see the Polestar, their two like flagship cars. They looked really nice on the outside. I'm, you know, obviously any new car does. One is a total EV that costs like $60,000, and it's sort of like a competitor to the Model S, I guess, a dumbed down Model S. But I sat in it, and it seems luxurious. And you sit in it. And the first thing I did was start playing with the touch screen, you know, like touching it, trying to figure out the user interface. And it was so complicated.
really?
I was like, man, I want to test drive this thing just to see. But I started playing the user interface, and I knew right away, like, this thing's not going to, you know, take much away from the Model S or Model 3 or whatever. You know, just because the interface it was hard to play with, and there's all these extra buttons that was like, it's just too much, you know. Maybe you could learn it, and I will investigate it further. But my initial take was that this isn't going to compete.
Yeah, I want you actually to test it out for me. Actually,
I will.
Yeah, take a test drive. Because I was watching some videos of like the user interface from the Polestar, and I was actually impressed by how many functions are integrated in that touch screen.
Yeah,
like, it reminded me
there
of
is a lot of functions.
Yeah, it reminded me of the early Model S. Like, and you're like, whoa, you could do everything. You know, you could like control all the stuff just from that touch screen. Supposedly Google has developed that's Google's operating system.
Okay,
and it's not like Google has like their Android Auto that you can kind of beam onto the screen, but this isn't that. It's a separate kind of like operating system that lives in the car that controls every single part of the car. And no one's talking about this, or barely anyone. But I think like Google might be having in their mind to add on autonomous driving into that operating system. And I think my hunch, and I can't verify it, but I would imagine Google gives it away for free to the OEMs. And that's how OEMs like mark up their price, get profit margin, and try to compete with Tesla. But yeah, definitely. I'm gonna
test drive.
Yeah, test drive it, man, and let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah, check
I
out
mean,
the
there's no supercharger network for it, and then their other car was a $160,000 car. It looked super nice. It was a two-door, but it was a hybrid of electric and gas. I guess it's really fast or something. But I think it was 120,000. But still, I was like, wow, that's expensive. Like,
Mhm.
but I definitely want to test drive. I gave the guy my email because he said he's going to email me information to schedule a test drive, but he hasn't emailed me yet. That was a few days ago, but I'm
Yeah.
planning to test drive it just for my own investment research on Tesla competition.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about this one tweet you did. You said
Sure.
contempt prior to investigation. By Herbert Spencer, a great quote that is the epitome of mainstream investing flaws I notice the most. Okay, so
Yes.
contempt prior to investigation. Like, what do you mean by
Yeah.
that? Can you kind of
Yeah, I mean,
expand?
it's sort of what I just did now with the
Yeah.
Polestar in a way. Like I catch myself, like I'm trying not to draw a conclusion, but I looked at it first and I was like, this isn't as good as the Model S, but I want to give it a further chance. Like I'm not just closing the door on it, right? But I think a lot of people don't, they just have their initial reaction and they stick with that, and they don't open the door to other ideas. So that contempt prior to investigation, that's, it's sort of like prejudice, I guess you could say, or, prejudging something. Maybe you read the news and you see some headlines and you just assume that it's true and you just go off of that, and I think that's a big mistake. People watch on CNBC the opinions of people that are about Tesla or other stocks, and they just kind of draw their own conclusions based on what those opinions are instead of testing it for themselves or really diving in to reviews by regular people,
Mhm.
that aren't part of car magazines and such. So the contempt prior to investigation, it's like you really need to be aware of our assumptions. We assume so
Mhm.
many things in life, and we don't even realize what we assume or what we don't.
Mhm.
Um, you know, we make decisions based on these assumptions, and we don't even realize we're making decisions or we're not.
Mhm.
You just kind of have to examine that. Like driving a car at a red light, you make a decision whether you know it or not to stop at the red light, right? Because we assume that the people coming from the other direction are going to go on a green light, or if you see a green light, you kind of assume that you can go through it without, checking for people, coming the other directions or whatnot. And I also see people walking on the street, for example, the little white man shows up and they start walking, but they don't even look to make sure the cars are stopping, right?
Mhm.
So they just assume everyone's going to stop, and that's a real life situation where people are putting their lives in jeopardy just assuming that the drivers are paying attention and not like texting and about to run a red light and run them over,
Mhm.
So that stuff happens in investing, all the time, and people just assume things they shouldn't, and you just have to. It's hard to develop awareness of assumptions, um, but you sort of just have to look at every decision you make, whether it's a decision on an opinion you're having, and think about assumptions that go into that decision.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I definitely agree. I think assumptions, they are extremely powerful.
Dangerous and
Yeah,
dangerous
and
and
dangerous
powerful.
too.
Yeah,
Um, and I think a lot of people just aren't aware of how many assumptions that everyone has. It's just you
yeah.
can't get away from this in a sense. Someone was asking me on Twitter, because I did this thread about kind of skills that I see as important in, let's say, identifying a 100x opportunity. And one person was saying, "Hey, what skill do you rely on the most?
Hmm.
Let's say in investing or finding opportunity." And I was thinking about it, and I go, I probably one of the things I do the most is I intake a lot of information, and most of it is reading, but I do it other ways too. And I try to go to first source information. So I'm going to like the CEO, to the
Hmm.
S1, annual reports, just what the company is saying, like, etc. And I'm intaking like a ton of stuff, like very quickly in a sense. And then I meditate on it. Like
Smart.
I just like, if I, like, for example, last night, my wife and I, we were watching some IPO roadshow videos. So there's a great, website. Just do a Google search on IPO roadshow videos, and
Okay.
you'll see this one site that has all of the current IPOs that are about to go hit the market. They have the videos from the company during the IPO period. The thing is, these
Okay.
videos, they disappear after the IPO happens. And most of these videos you can never see again. But they're
Mm.
like the best information that the company can give about their company.
Mm-hmm.
It's like golden stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so my wife and I were watching like Airbnb's IPO roadshow. And first off, most people aren't going to watch this IPO roadshow because
Yeah.
I don't know, they'll just read some article, right? Or watch some YouTube
Yeah.
video or something. But you've got to look at the founder, you got to look at the company. And then I'm reading through their S1, right? And I'm actually going through the entire S1. And I wouldn't be able to do it unless I could probably read fast, but I go through everything, you know? So I get a sense of their financials, etc. And then I meditate on it. And what I do, it's different forms, but sometimes I just kind of take a step back and I just like think about it, you know, for a couple days, different times. Other times I'll just like kind of close my eyes and just for like 30, 40 minutes or an hour, I'll just think about like
Mm.
trying to go underneath like what's really going on in this company. Like what are they really doing? Like what do they
Yeah.
really stand for? You know? And by doing that, it's kind of this mystical experience in a sense, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like time stands still. And I start to see things just kind of more like static and they're more like reachable and I could kind of grasp these things more tangibly. It's weird because while I'm watching stuff and intaking it, things are just moving too fast. They're like shooting stars where it's like I can't hold on to something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. So after like, you know, and I usually meditate on something more than I will intake it by at least 2 or 3 times. So if I'm like intaking like Airbnb for an hour or two, I'll meditate actually longer than that in different ways.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
won't be
Yeah.
maybe just one setting, but maybe I'll just talk about it or think about it or, you know, bring something up with
Yeah.
my wife, etc.
Would it be like you take a hike or something on your own and think about it while you're hiking
Ex-
too, kind of thing?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It would just be like kind of random stuff too. Like, yeah, I'll just be writing some notes, you know, I'll be talking to my wife. I'll just sit
Yeah.
back and just like think about what I just saw or read, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
some funny stuff will come out. Like I kind of wish I record some of this stuff with my wife, especially because it's like it's like I get to know these founders, it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm not just listening to them, I'm actually like dissecting it on so many levels where I feel
Yeah.
like I know these Airbnb guys now. Yeah, kind of like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand like
That's amazing.
I understand like kind of what they're all about, you know? And
Yeah.
their quirks and their weaknesses and strengths are so interesting to me, you know?
Yeah.
And I talk about it with my wife and all the time and I do that for a lot of these companies too, you know?
Sure.
And
Sure. Now I feel like I understand more about how you get your super deep like insights on these things. The meditation stuff. Like
yeah,
it's pretty.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and it's a combination of first source data, like
Yeah.
like you can't just rely on other people's like take on a something, you know. It
Yeah.
loses its
It's like playing the game of telephone after a while too.
exactly,
You
yeah,
lose-
yeah. You've got to go to the source, but that in a way, I think, like, and I don't see
clears
that.
your mind. It gets rid of distractions, right? So you can really focus on like the job at hand, which is evaluating Airbnb, right? That kind of thing. It's
Exactly.
just like a really good tool for that, it sounds like.
Yeah, and going back to this whole discussion on bias, right?
Yeah.
Is and assumptions, like it really helps me to dissect my assumptions and biases. Because if you have to sit with something for a few hours and meditate on it, it's like you are more aware of what you're assuming, you know? And then you
Yeah, your
just
mind drifts into weird directions
Exactly.
and you can examine it and be like, why is my mind drifting to that? That's an assumption. That's strange. I should be
exactly,
focusing on this. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, yeah. So but
Fascinating.
yeah, I think that's probably the number one skill I rely on, which is kind of insane. You know, where do you find? I don't know. I don't even know if it will work for other people in a sense,
Yeah.
but yeah, I do it like every day. Like it's just something. It just is a habit. It's just natural. You know, it's like
That's really, it sounds like it's really helpful. Yeah, I need to start. I mean, sometimes, I take like a power nap almost every day. And when I'm like laying down for my power nap, I try to like almost like meditate. And if I don't actually sleep, then I'm just like meditating for 20 or 30 minutes, which is fine. And so sometimes I'll think about stuff but maybe I should focus it more on like my investment decisions and see if that helps me get more clarity. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed you've brought up a few times on your Twitter account about kind of testing the veracity of a narrative. Like, what do you mean by
Yes.
that, and how do you do that personally?
Yeah, testing like how true I think a narrative. There's so many good storytellers out there, people that are, have gotten good at creating these stories that can draw people, almost hypnotize people that get told so well. Like I saw some Twitter rant by some, I guess, guy that's a short of Tesla or hates Tesla the other night. And I don't know. I think a lot of us saw it. Some of the Tesla bull people like retweeted or responded, and it was this guy. I can't remember the name of his wealth management firm, but he put like a 20 tweet storm out there about how like he thinks Elon Musk is sort of a fraud and blah blah blah. And I read through it, and it's an interesting story. The way he told it was catchy too. It was like he was really good at crafting kind of like a short story there, and I could see how people who don't know about Tesla might read it and then easily gravitate towards it or grab onto it, like almost get hypnotized by it. And so I think that happens a lot. Like some people can get really good at creating such a fantastical story that just makes sense to a lot of people, where they just believe it because it's such a cool story that makes sense and seems believable. But then you also have to look at the person, who's telling the story, whether it's a researcher or investment advisor or trader or just some pundit on TV or whatever. You have to kind of examine, that person's performance, for example. Like, does that person have any, is there any reason to think that person has done very well for themselves investing? Are they like a 50-year-old investment advisor that's trying to keep his job together, or a 60-year-old investment advisor? I mean, not that that's bad. That's great. It's a noble thing, but if you're trying to persuade people to your investment ideas as being like the one and only investment idea on a certain topic, whether it's Tesla or whatever, and you're 60 years old and you're kind of like, you're not like super well off on your own, then it's like, okay, well, your track record might not have been super great unless you just started doing this, maybe. So you have to look at the background, the context, of the person telling the story. Some people, on the contrary, I think there's people like Ron Barron, right, of Barron Funds, or Kathy Wood of ARK Invest. These people have demonstrated incredible track records, and even like, what's scary is Jim Chanos. He saw the Enron. He was famous for figuring out Enron, right? Or I guess the more guy Michael Burry more recently, who said he's like the short. He was well known for having a track record with the Big Short. And that's that. So some people, it's hard to tell from their track record. I guess so it doesn't always work, but that's just one example of trying to figure out the veracity. You try to see, has this person been right before in my experience? Have I seen this person's accurately predict other investment decisions? And if so, that goes a long way for me for valuing their future stock predictions. So like you, for example, like I value your stock analysis or predict, sentiment greatly, because I've known you so long and you've been right on so many things. Or Kathy Wood and her team, they have a lot of great picks and they do very well. So that's sort of what I mean, I guess. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. I find it actually fascinating. It's like, I agree, like there seems to be this like proliferation of stories, and a lot of them turn out to be conspiracies or not true in a sense.
Yeah.
And it feels like if you have this like tactic of just being loud and repetitive and trying to use some logic to piece together things, like you will attract an audience, and people will believe you. And it's kind of concerning in a lot of ways, the way people believe whoever is the loudest and most repetitive. And
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the things is, I think track record is interesting. I find some like inadequacies in relying on just track record, because I feel like that in a way can be kind of an exterior kind of more result of it's kind of a performance, is a lagging indicator in a way, where it's true. Maybe they could be accurate and that led to that, but then a lot of people, maybe it was like, it was more luck than skill,
Yeah.
or
And they
some,
might regress to the mean or
yeah, or
something like
something
that.
else, like you have to wonder about like Jim Chanos, like fine, he had some great, picks early on, but
Yeah.
how can you be so wrong about the probably the greatest, business story?
Company
Yeah,
of
of our,
our probably
maybe,
of our century, possibly of the 21st
yeah,
century.
and
Yeah.
of the greatest probably entrepreneur of our century or lifetime. Like,
Yeah.
how can you
So
be
far.
complete, not just a little bit wrong, like having some doubts, but actually going 180 against it, right?
Yeah.
Like, like, and I think people get tripped up when they look at credentials or just performance.
Hmm.
So, one of my angles is I like to do this like multidisciplinary type of like approach where my hypothesis is this is I believe if you have a multidisciplinary kind of background where you can understand lots of different fields,
Hmm.
um, and the thing is it doesn't necessarily have to be all academic. I think it
Hmm.
could be somewhat intuitive in some ways, like some fields, um,
Hmm.
whether it's like psychology or mass behavior or market dynamics, etc. But there's so many fields, like even goes into history and politics and all this stuff. Some people have multidisciplinary things, and they've in an academic sense. Other people might have it in a streetwise sense. But I think
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
you have kind of this multidisciplinary background and understanding, you're able to catch the blind spots of these conspiracy theories. You're able to catch the inconsistencies. And
Hmm.
usually it's because the fault of these conspiracy theories is they lack understanding in one of or many of these different areas. You know,
Hmm.
um, they are overemphasizing just one aspect of or
Yeah.
one angle, of the thing rather than looking at it from many angles. And I'm able to poke holes fairly quickly by just like naturally being inquisitive, and I'm able to kind of penetrate all these different multi angles and see weaknesses. My problem is that I find weaknesses in like literally everyone's narrative. Meaning like it's like it's hard for me to listen to someone at length, like
Yeah.
continuously over time. Like I can listen to them for a few times, like three or four
Yeah.
times, and after that it's just I get so many like, you know like um like I see the weaknesses in certain
See the
one,
holes
yeah,
in
in one or
there.
two
Yeah.
angles. And so I have
Yeah.
to like say, okay, this person knows a lot about other areas. Maybe overall they have some good advice. But that's kind of my weakness in a way where it's like I can be slightly overcritical, I think, because I see,
Yeah.
some of the holes. Um, but it also kind of is one of the reasons why I think I'm a little bit more, I guess, I would say cautious, but I'm very like, you know, like in my research or how I view things, I'm really trying to like, I guess, I have high standards, in what I'm looking
Hmm.
for, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you do as much or more research on deep dives, I guess, on things, and so I feel like you're probably as equipped as anyone to poke holes in people's narratives. And me by contrast, you a lot of not just you, almost everyone says like read a lot of books, get good at speed reading, and I'm like the opposite end of the spectrum. I like read no books. I mean, I look at Twitter feeds and short email. I'm a slow reader. I'm not.
Yeah.
I've read some books. Here and there, but I like to listen. I listen to like podcasts of authors, maybe to feel like I get like 60 or 70% of what their book is saying in a 1 or 2 hour podcast. But I guess I try to poke holes in narratives as well, but in maybe different ways. And
Mhm.
and it's always good just to be skeptical of all these stories being told to us through media, because we just sort of automatically assume media has some authority of information, and that's not true
Mhm.
anymore. Especially like maybe 50 years ago, the New York Times or whatever was like reputable with information, but today, I feel like the journalists or editors at a lot of these, newspapers and media organizations, there a lot of them are good. There's still some good ones, but there's also some bad ones that don't
Yeah.
know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, media is like interesting. It's just like sometimes I wonder, like with technology, it's like a lot of these news sites, they'll have different titles, like multiple titles for each article. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you go to some sites, some popular websites, they'll show you the title, but then it'll change the next time you load it. And what they're doing is they're doing like A/B testing. They're just like
Interesting.
showing like they're showing like a bunch of titles, like 3 or 4 different titles, and whatever gets clicked on the most, that's the one they decide on, right? So it's all
It's like a
like
little algorithm trying to figure out what's going to get your attention the
exactly.
most.
It's all geared to like clicking, attention,
Yeah.
attention, and that's like the whole model, right? The core of media in a sense.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's like I fear that media has traded in maybe truth and accuracy, and I don't even know if they've ever had it, but
Yeah.
they just kind of pushed that aside
It's a lower
for
priority now.
yeah, exactly, for attention and monetization and survival. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Advertising, it's all advertising driven now, so they have to get the clicks to make them have money. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
yeah,
It's a model that's really causing problems in a lot of ways,
yeah.
and I think Elon mentioned on, that he wants to create that a media. What did he call the media? The Russian word, I can't remember.
That's
Do you remember
right.
what it was?
That's right. I forget to. It's been a while.
I can't. It's been a while, but I
Yeah.
think it's a real problem in society. Just media in general now is
Hmm.
just clickbait,
Yeah.
advertising, headlines everywhere, and sensational, and geared to like draw emotional outrage, so people click on it. No one wants to read a good story about a fireman saving a kitty cat from a tree. They want to read the story of the tree falling, on the cat, killing it. So it's just human nature. Our lizard brain wants to look at the fear mongering stuff
Hmm.
because we want to know about that so we can survive, and so we're just drawn to that. But it's
Hmm.
it's it's brought us to a sad space in terms of media with
Yeah.
advertising business model.
Yeah. One Twitter user was asking us to talk about like what are some red flags
Hmm.
when investing into like a particular stock or business. Are there anything that kind of comes to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I personally don't believe in the product, you know, um, for example, Beyond Meat, I'm not that stock has gone through the roof. I've been tempted to short it a few times. I'm not going to short it, but I think, you know, that company to me, just because I don't believe in the product. I look at the ingredients list and it's got like a million chemicals and things that I think could really harm people. It's like the opposite of natural, and so it's like the ultimate processed food, and to me, I think there's probably a lot of risk in that, health risk, and that eventually it'll catch up to them, and so that's like a red flag to me if I don't like the product myself, and I tried it and I don't like it, that kind of, um, what do you have any red flags?
Um, yeah, I mean, most of it is like it'll come up through my meditation times where I'll just
Yeah.
be like, just like as much as I try, like for example, yesterday, I was watching. I mean, this isn't a complete red flag, but I was watching this IPO roadshow video from C3.ai. They do enterprise AI kind of solutions for companies, and I was watching the CEO talk for like 40 minutes with my wife, and at the end of the talk, we couldn't stop laughing at like how like this CEO wants to like do everything and take over every single industry, like in an entire world. And he just has this crazy master plan. And then
Yeah.
his whole theory is like every other AI and, enterprise company is basically a feature of their platform and they do it better
Hmm.
or as good or better than any other company in the world. And like, we were just kind of laughing, just not in a disrespectful way, because I think actually maybe they could be a good investment. I'm not going to
Yeah.
make a judgment call on it, but it's like for me, it's like one of the things I appreciate like about Warren Buffett is there are a few insights that Buffett has that I give him credit for. Like
Hmm.
like his performance might be so over the past whatever 10 15 years, but there are like one insight he has is like investing in a way is like he loves it because you're like a baseball batter, and rather than having to swing at a pitch and being called for like a strike or a ball, like in baseball, it's a different game. You could just wait for the perfect pitch. Like you could wait 10, 20 pitches. You're not called the strike. And you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
wait
yeah.
for that perfect pitch and then take a swing. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
Buffett was saying basically that's what he like really appreciates about investing. It's like rigged in your favor.
Patience.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
rigged in your favor if you're patient and you know how to take that big bat, right? That big swing, the right time with accuracy, etc. And I think for me, it's like it's not so much that like I'm trying to avoid all these red flags. It's more like I'm trying to I'm trying to make contact with that big ball, that outsized baseball, not a regular baseball,
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might see regular baseballs and sure I might hit it, I might get like a single or a double or even a home run, but it's like I'm waiting for that like fat ball, you
That
know?
softball
Yeah, right in the
pitch,
middle where I feel
slow pitch.
I could just like whack it out of the ballpark for like a grand slam,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I might miss, right? That, and I
Yeah.
might, whatever, but that's fine, and I
Yeah.
want to use that for my advantage. So for me, more of the red flags is like, is, is kind of being swayed by something that really isn't that great. It's like, it's okay. It's like, oh, why not invest in it?
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
me, that's kind of like, it's like, I can't, in my framework of what I think investing really is at the core, I just feel like that's going to sabotage my whole like investing like life, just
Yeah.
trying to, pick, 20 or 30 of these like okay investments.
Yeah. Yeah. It's better just to be concentrated, I agree, in like a couple companies that you really believe in versus picking 30 companies that are so-so and, hoping one of them pans out, I agree. And just be patient. And another kind of red flag, like you were kind of getting at with the story you were telling about you and your wife is if you hear whether it's the CEO or founder or just someone, some pundit on TV talking about us pitching a stock idea, um, what are they telling me that is new? Like, what are they telling me that I find um, foundational, like to their company? Are they just throwing a bunch of buzzwords out there? AI, cloud-based, are they just throwing all these buzzwords out there trying to get a hook on people? Or are they telling me something really unique and interesting that I haven't seen elsewhere, or that I don't know of other companies doing something like that or having that capability, right? And there's so many of these buzzwords out there now that I think it easily clouds people's judgment on whether a story is a good investing story or not.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes it's hard to discern that. You really have to dive in, like you said, like whether you meditate on the company. First, you have to look at all the information, and then kind of meditate on it to decide. But that's sort of a pink or red flag is how many buzzwords are they using in their description or sell of their company or whatever.
Sure. One Twitter user was asking me to ask you, what are you buying your family for Christmas? Houses, yachts, or islands? And I wanted to dissect that a little bit,
Sure.
in the sense that I don't know actually what you're buying, but I mean
Nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, nothing new. We're going away, hopefully, we're going to away for a week if for Christmas if the lockdowns don't stop it, which it looks like
sure.
they might. So
Yeah. How much has your buying habits changed?
not really much. We're just we got a new house. We're finishing that renovation on. Hopefully, one of the next discussions we do, I'll be in a nicer place, a nicer setup. But that's been in the works for almost 3 or 4 months now. It's an upgrade of a house, but it's not like a massive upgrade, and it's bigger and such. But other than that, our buying habits are pretty much the same. We're just more relaxed about, like, if we go out to dinner, or we can get a nicer meal or whatever. We're not like worried about like budgeting as much as we used to be, obviously, or at all,
Yeah.
really. We're still being conscious and not overly, you know, crazy about how we spend money.
Yeah. 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 I took that question. I was like, it's going to be an interesting question because like knowing you, like I would expect actually it not to really change your life that drastically in
That's
terms
right.
of like what you're doing. And the reason is because like, and I kind of, it kind of speaks, I can see that because I see that also myself where I think when there's a certain level of detachment from like money and the gains, it like, so here's the theory. The theory is in order to really like do crazy gains with a significant portion of your portfolio, let's say over half or 90% or whatever,
Hmm.
I think you do need to have a certain detachment from that portfolio in a way. Meaning if it means too much, like it's really hard to do like 90% of your entire portfolio in a in a stock that seems risky in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
But and so that's where I think a lot of times like the conventional traditional approach is like, you know, oh, bet 1%, you know, of your portfolio or max
Yeah.
2%
Yeah.
on a risky stock, right?
Yeah.
That's a traditional view. But I think that view comes from a little bit of a preservation type of mentality, which I think is actually appropriate for a lot of people because perhaps that's what they need to do. They need to preserve their portfolio.
Yeah.
However, I think there's a way to hack the system. And the way to hack the system is to try to short circuit the need for preservation in how you invest. And the way you do that is you find kind of a way to detach yourself from the portfolio by having some other type of way to feel secure and stable.
Yeah, I think a good way to do that is you try to live below your means
Hmm.
for, don't, what I did is I tried to live below my means as much as I could. It's still an uncomfortable way, but not getting the house we could have afforded the second when we moved to California, maybe, or just, little choices here and there and cooking at home more often, so that we could keep more money in our trading account as like a detachment, like you said,
Hmm.
to invest and having a more risky stock like Tesla or Tesla long-term options and such, and not be worried about losing that because I'm used to living below my means. I've had a great job. I've been
Yeah.
lucky, and I've risen the ranks in that job and was getting paid very well. But I was careful to like set aside a certain amount always to my retirement with that job that was separate from my personal trading account. So I was able to detach the personal trading account money, like you said, to
Hmm.
like my my riskier trading investments like
Yeah.
Tesla. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think because of that certain detachment, when you get great gains,
Hmm.
it doesn't mean as much as if you were super attached to it
Hmm.
because you were somewhat detached from it from the beginning. And that's
Yeah.
why the lifestyle doesn't or the behavior doesn't change as much that much, you know.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think
it's great. I love it, like you said,
yeah,
but it's not like I was depending on that
yeah,
win of to get a bigger house or to do
yeah,
something different. Like, yeah,
yeah,
I,
like
I, I agree with you.
yeah, I think there are different ways to like kind of hack that need for preservation. I think one could be like living below your means, like another could be like a high paying job like you're saying, another could be like a separate basket of assets. And that's what we did with kind of real estate and passive income that allowed us to be kind of more aggressive and have a detachment with our stocks, right? But I think yeah, the end result is like you're more free with decisions, you know, because
Yeah.
you're not as scared, you know, and
Yeah.
you're not taking a just a preservation only, type of preservation focused approach. You're
Yeah.
really trying to grow that portfolio, and make the best decisions you can for that.
Yeah. And you learn a lot when you start doing that. That's how you
Yeah.
kind of like you learn through experience
Yeah.
and then when you take the risks that you decide to take, then you force yourself to really learn about it,
Yeah.
and you grow, in your investing, skill set, I think,
Yeah.
naturally from that.
Yeah. Like, it's like we do live below our means. We've had for a while, ever since I can remember. But partly it was by choice. Partly it was like circumstance. Like, so we picked up a couple houses, like, 10 years ago or so. We wanted to have like a portfolio of like a bunch of rental houses. That was kind of like an opportunity I saw. But after picking up a few, I kind of said, rental houses. I kind of felt some limitations, but
Hmm.
we decided like we'll live in one of the rental houses. That
Okay.
So it wasn't really like a house that we felt it was our dream house. It was more of a house that cash flowed. It cash flowed with just 20% down payment. It was in a decent neighborhood. It didn't have like you know everything we wanted in a house at that time. So, but we're like, hey, we'll just live in it for a year, and then we will look for our own house. So that was like back in like 2011 or something, before Tesla,
Okay.
2010. And it was great because our payment was so low compared to, like, I mean, yeah, it was it's very low. It's like an apartment, like a one bedroom apartment price, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Our mortgage payment and property taxes and everything. And then we were always looking for that house to buy, right? And so we had that down payment, and we were just like house shopping, and we're like, we had an idea of what type of house we wanted, like, high ceilings, backyard, all this stuff. And we kind of had this long journey where we put in all these offers to these dream houses, and then we went through short sale processes, and they all got like, they ended up like basically not following through, you know?
Hmm.
And so we went through 3 or 4 houses that we were trying to buy, in 2013, 2014. And for 2 years, we were in escrow over 3 or 4 houses,
Wow.
basically.
Wow.
And everything fell through. And some of them were like large houses too. It's like kind of our dream house and stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Oh, it's
and it
tough.
all fell through. And I was like, this sucks, because I knew we missed the bottom. I was like,
Uh,
we put in all the offers at the bottom, like they were like just like 60-70% off of the top.
yeah.
and and we had like, it just like, it felt like a failure, right? And we ended up putting that money into Tesla options, and it worked out fine. But the
Yeah.
funny thing is, we haven't moved from that house, from the house like 10 years ago. That's like, the mortgage payment is like a one bedroom apartment,
Yeah.
and we've just learned to love the house. It's smaller house, 15, 1600 square feet. And, we've had like so many chances to move, but there's something about it where I just love that freedom,
Mhm.
of like having not just low payments, but just not having like a big thing to take care of,
Yeah.
and just like, I'm not saying that we're never going to get a house, because we might move to Seattle and we might pick up something and it might be bigger. I don't know. But
Yeah.
going back to the point about kind of living below your means, my
Mhm.
wife kind of credits our house as a big reason why she felt very comfortable with our outsized Tesla position. Because she keeps on saying, our house, it was so low payments, and
Yeah, yeah.
I liked the house. And so it was okay if we lost everything in Tesla, because we
Yeah.
were basically
Yeah.
over 100% in Tesla. And for me, I didn't really understand it. I was like, okay. But then it seemed like it really meant a lot to her, kind of
Mhm.
having kind of a low cost of living, and, just being able to at least keep shelter over her head in case everything just went, haywire. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it's definitely one way, I think, to hack kind of, the whole risk factor.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of ways to hack, but yeah, the detachment from money is key. Yeah. I mean, and practicing that in other ways, like I've referenced in previous videos, poker, for example, like trying to practice, okay, I'm going to a casino to gamble, play poker. I'm bringing just $300, and I know I'm probably going to lose it, but I'm going to do the best I can to play the game, you know.
Hmm.
And so same thing with investing. Like I have X thousand bucks in my personal trading account. I know I'm probably going to lose it, but I'm going to do my best to play the game,
Hmm.
you know. And so I think of investing. I'm able to think of investing as like a game, a big game, and
Yeah.
it's really helped me.
Yeah. Awesome. So this is part two. So I have some more things to talk to you about.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to talk about like our first investing kind of experiences or forays, like even before stocks. Like I want to
Hmm.
know
Hmm.
like kind of um, stuff like when you were a kid or a teenager or whatever,
Sure.
like
Sure. Yeah.
stuff. I'll share some stuff too, but I think
Okay.
that might be kind of interesting to see
Yeah.
what type of lessons we might have learned back then. And yeah, I have some other stuff, but anyways, we'll end part two here, and we'll
Okay.
go ahead and for we'll do part three and we'll release that the following day. All right,
Okay.
thanks.